All right there, folks. Welcome back. Welcome back. ScottGodwin.net. This is Scott Godwin here, and we're going to talk about alcohol, a love-hate story. Alcohol is it's a love-hate situation. It's a love-hate situation. There are a lot of things that we can love and appreciate about alcohol, but we have to be really careful that we don't overdo it because there's a lot to hate and a lot to not like about alcohol. Okay? So I'm going to do a couple videos on alcohol. Comment and let me know what you think. And you can subscribe to my blog, scottgodwin.net. And you can stay in touch with me that way. You can find me online. But let's get started. This video, what we're going to actually talk about, some of the background, some of the history, some of the meaning of alcohol, sort of the deep philosophy there. And then we're also going to get into talking about some of the positives of alcohol. And in the next video, we're going to talk more about the negatives, and I'm going to give you some recommendations. So make sure you watch both videos, because this video will be a little more fun, a little more interesting as far as history and culture and that kind of thing. But the next video will go into some of the downsides. So let's get started, and I want to kind of conjure up an image for you. Think about one of the most iconic people in the 20th century, Winston Churchill, the Prime Minister of England. There was a really popular movie that came out last year about Winston Churchill, and if you would notice, Churchill would always be drinking. Okay, always be drinking. Now, a lot of the people that we really look up to in life historically have been big drinkers. I mean, that's just the way it is, and we tend to have positive images of alcohol because of advertising, because of the movies, because of just the culture that we're brought up in. We're led to believe that there are a lot of good things about alcohol, and I would say there are. Just this past Saturday, actually, I had some friends over, and we watched the Kentucky Derby. But we also had some Kentucky bourbon. That was part of the fun, part of the social aspect of alcohol, was to get together and to enjoy that Kentucky bourbon and watch that Kentucky horse race. And what a race it was! I think it was the first disqualification ever in the history of the Derby. But that smooth Kentucky bourbon made the whole event much more fun, frankly. But there's not a lot of negative advertising you see on television or in magazines about alcohol. You may see a warning sign here or there, but as far as media is concerned, we tend to have pretty rosy images of alcohol. And like I said in this video, we're going to talk mainly about the positive things. Now, let's talk about the history of alcohol for just a minute. This is pretty interesting. The oldest brewery found in the world, so far anyway, goes back to about 13,000 BC. This brewery was found in Haifa, Israel, around 13,000 BC, so about 15,000 years ago. As early as 7,000 BC, the Chinese were making wine in somewhere in northern China. And so that goes back 9,000 years. And then the European wine cultures, as best we know so far, go back to about 6 to 7,000 BC in Georgia as well as Greece. Greece actually is associated with, or there's a Greek god, Dionysus, who is associated with alcohol. Dionysus, there was a big cult that was based around a religious cult, and when I say cult, I don't mean that. I don't mean it in a negative way. I just meant that there was a following for this god Dionysus, because this god was the god of winemaking, the god of the harvest, the god of celebration and ecstasy, fertility, the god of ecstasy and theater and religion and myth and even madness. But Dionysus represents alcohol in that sense represents what effect it can have on us, but it also represents something deeper than that, which is going to get to sort of the communal aspects of alcohol that I want to touch on today. If you don't have a good harvest, you may not survive. If you don't have a strong community, your community may not survive. And so, wine, particularly in Greece and in European countries around the Mediterranean, wine served as that binding force, okay? And the god Dionysus was there to allow them to celebrate that, because wine represented agriculture. It represented the community. It represented fertility and survival and the group doing well and the culture doing well and joy and ecstasy and survival. And so it was to be celebrated religiously in this case. But regardless, alcohol goes way back. Even in Latin America, the chicha beer, which is a type of, it's typically a corn beer, that was produced in Latin America when the Spanish arrived around the 1500s. So alcohol goes way back in many civilizations, pretty much all. And if you go back beyond that brewery that's been found in Israel, we don't have any more information as far as I know that goes past that. But there may have been alcohol surrounded, or excuse me, involved in various cultures before that we just don't know about. So it goes way back and is part of all cultures. What is alcohol? Alcohol is a fermented drink which contains ethanol. Okay, it's produced by grains, fruits, or other sources. Now it is a highly regulated $1 trillion business worldwide, and alcohol acts as a depressant. So we have to keep that in mind. We're asking ourselves, okay, what is this? Alcohol is a depressant, and as a matter of fact, we'll get into some of the positives and negatives when it comes to the science and the health perspectives a little bit later. But if you just keep that in mind, that it acts as a depressant, just taking a couple days off will basically make someone feel more positive, mentally speaking, okay, in the long term. So we just have to keep that in mind. It causes euphoria. It can cause you to have less anxiety. It can cause you to be more social, okay? So that social ability is huge. But it can also cause drunkenness, obviously. It can cause stupor. It can cause addiction. It can cause unconsciousness. And it can even cause death, accidents. So it's a very serious subject. Alcohol comes in three different forms. It comes in the form of wine, beer, and spirits, typically. So you can categorize alcohol in one of those three ways. Alcohol is neither good nor bad. It's a love-hate relationship. We drink for many reasons. We drink for social reasons. That's probably the most important one. We drink because of the biological effects on the brain. We drink because alcohol has a biological effect on our brains. It boosts these endorphins in the brain that make us feel good, at least temporarily. Alcohol can give us courage and confidence. It can make our conversations better. It can serve as a means of perpetuating tradition. That goes back to what I mentioned earlier when it comes to some of the religious history of Greece and some of the communities in Europe around wine. Alcohol can serve as a way to sort of bind the community. Think about the Irish pub. The sort of epicenter of Irish traditional life is the Irish pub. And people drink in the Irish pub. So that's a tradition. Why do we drink? What are some other reasons? Well, frankly, people drink to get drunk. And think about the words for that: smashed, loaded, wasted, annihilated, bombed. Okay, what does that mean? That means we're getting out of the analytical, sort of serious world that we live in on a day-to-day basis, where we're going to work, where we're trying to find something to eat for dinner, where we're taking care of our families, and so on. So the reason people drink in some cases is to sort of take a break from all that, to get out of the the day-to-day, the mundane, to get a little bit of that release. Whether that's good or not, we'll discuss that in these videos. So, alcohol can be a type of, even, shall I say, a religious, quasi-religious, spiritual release for a lot of people. It can have that drug-like effect on the brain and on the personality, maybe even on something deeper than that. So it has those connotations. It provides that type of liberation from the day to day and can give us that feeling of ecstasy. Comes with its big downside, okay, and we're going to get into that, but I'm being honest here. These are the reasons people drink. And then also, people drink out of habit and addiction. So those are some of the reasons people do drink. Now, are there scientifically valid reasons that people drink? Yes, there are scientifically valid reasons people drink. When I say that, what I mean is, are there studies that show that alcohol is actually healthy in small amounts? Yes, it can be in certain ways. It's a mixed picture. You may remember 10, 20 years ago, there seemed to be a lot of studies coming out that were pointing to the fact that people that drank a little bit every day lived longer. And that does seem to be the case in some studies. How much? 1, 2, 3 drinks. Okay? 1 or 2 normally. But what are the implications there? Why do people live longer? Truthfully, we don't know for sure. I've studied the research for years now, and we don't know for sure what the protective benefit is. There are a lot of theories out there, but there are some positive health benefits of very moderate drinking. And again, video 2, I'll get into the negatives, but small amount of alcohol can raise something called ellagic acid, and that's related to fat metabolism. It can lower our risk of cardiovascular disease. And there's something in wine called resveratrol that can be very, very healthy for longevity. It's an antioxidant. It's a powerful antioxidant. And so you can actually buy it in supplement form now. So wine particularly has been shown to boost longevity in that way, small amounts. A small amount of alcohol may help decrease the risk of dementia. Small amount. B vitamins and iron are found in darker beers. That's something that I think Guinness advertises at times. But those are just some of the positives. Then also going back to the social again, alcohol has communal properties, okay? You get together with your friends, you have a glass of wine, you have a beer. And I would say that's probably the most important health effect. I would say it is the most positive health benefit of alcohol is just to focus on that social aspect. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next video. But when it comes to the positive benefits, when it comes to the research, maybe a protective benefit for cardiovascular disease and dementia, maybe a little bit of help with fat metabolism, maybe a little bit of an antioxidant in some of the wines that we drink. But I would say the most important health aspect is the health benefits that come along with a communal culture of getting together and having a drink, whether it's having a wine dinner with friends or going to a pub, or whether it's just getting together with friends on the weekends or a couple days a week. That social connection is huge. There's a book called The Blue Zones, which I've done some videos about, and the Blue Zones go through 5 different places, and out of those 5 places, 4 out of the 5 sort of have a life sort of built socially around mild, very moderate alcohol consumption. So I think that communal structure can be big. This video, we got into some of the positives of alcohol, some of the history, some of the reasons people drink. The next video will go into some of the negatives and I'll give you some tips. ScottGodwin.net.